Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. It's Friday, so we're back with another tier list. Today we'll be talking about the most toxic Erratad non-leader cards in the Dragon Ball Super card game. We'll be ranking them from S tier being most toxic, A tier being somewhat toxic, and B tier being not really all that toxic. So we'll kind of take this walk down memory lane. If you guys are new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a video. And if you guys want to help support the channel, there are many ways to do so down in the description. But today, guys, if you're looking for more competitive content, I did actually post a new Patreon article today going over a matchup that should be very, very popular now that we are pretty much officially in Realm of the Gods format. So make sure to check that out if you want to see that or just support the channel. Really does help out. Anyways, let's get into this. We have 22 cards to talk about today. So firstly, we're going with the Goku Golden Grade Ape Unison. So this card was errated, I think, actually technically before it was released. So a lot of times like that, they claim it's like an errata for either a misprinted reason or like a language reason, but this one is pretty much a power errata. It's not really worded like, it's not really changed grammatically. The energy cost is literally just changed. I think they claimed that they made a mistake on the energy cost. But yeah, so basically the activate main here to draw 2 cards on original printing only costed 2 energy, which actually made it look like a really strong Unison. And that was also around the time that Sand Instinct's Goku came out, so it kind of seemed on par. You had to spend the initial 2 energy to even play the Unison, and then a following 2 energy to draw 2. Didn't really seem like that crazy, but they ended up errating the activate main to cost 4 total. So unfortunately, the card kind of became unplayable. So this is going in the not very toxic tier. Maybe it would have been toxic or slightly toxic if it only cost 2 to draw, but again, you got to make that initial 4 energy investment just to draw 2 cards. Didn't really seem all that crazy. Next up, we have Mind Controlling Bobbidy. So this card was absolutely wild for several formats and actually was able to come back in a few later formats. Keep in mind, this is a set 1 or 2 card that says when you play it, you can look at the top 7, and if I'm remembering correctly, play 2 red battle cards, cost 7 or less, or maybe power 30k or less, but basically 2 giant red boss monsters, which actually eventually allowed you to play a red-green Kaioken Goku boss monster that would let you take all your life down to 1, look at your opponent's hand, get super huge in attack power. It was wild. So this card goes to S tier because they originally had to errata it to say you had to have 6 or more energy to resolve its effect, because initially you were abusing this with chain attack Trunks to just play it early, but even in later builds, people would just ramp 6 energy and just play it, right? So this card was pretty wild. Then we have Bibbidi, his father, the Primeval Conjurer. So this card was errated because in black decks that weren't Black Majin Buu, which is the deck this was intended to be played in, this was able to reach ridiculously high combo power, and the main one there was Vegex. Like, even though it didn't draw a card, imagine having a 30k combo for a super combo. It was absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, this card was pretty dang toxic. They should have just, they went about the errata wrong though, in my opinion. They errated it to say that it can only reach a maximum of 15k power, basically just like any other super combo, because a normal super combo, like, you draw a card and you expect to draw 5k, so there's 15k combo for 1 card. This is essentially the same thing, 15k combo for 1 card, but I think they could have kept it the same and let it kind of just be like this unlimited power if they errated it to say your leader has to be a Black Majin Buu. I think that would have been a really unique way to keep a card like this in the game that was limited to a deck that could only have a capped hand size of 5. I think that would have been cool, but they ended up errating it to basically be a regular super combo, so now it's not really going to see play. But anyways, Galactic Buster. So this was errated after seeing a lot of play in just about every single blue deck. It was kind of like, you know, how we have like yellow good stuff now. This eventually just became part of blue good stuff and was found in just about every popular blue deck. So I'm going to go with somewhat toxic. This card was very, very strong, don't get me wrong, but it required an entire engine. It wasn't like tier 0 in the format that it was relevant in. I honestly would have been pretty happy if they kept it alive in blue, because it was a pretty neat engine in my opinion. I really kind of like when decks are configured out of just like several different strong engines as opposed to like one archetype or just like a pure mess of just broken blue cards or broken yellow cards or whatever color you're playing. I do like when you kind of have to fit like a mini engine that works with other good cards. I do like that, but they ended up errating it to say it can only be played in a Bojack leader. So far hasn't seen too much competitive success with the errata, but I think that can change. The cards are strong enough to where if they get a little bit more support, I think it can actually do some pretty cool stuff. But anyways, Catastrophic Blow, automatic S tier, one of my least favorite cards in the Dragon Ball Super card game. This was doing some crazy stuff, and there were some formats where Invoker was like high level of top tier. There were some formats where it was more, you know, rogue tier. But even when, no matter what, like when you played against it, it was super frustrating, because Catastrophic Blow sometimes would allow your opponent to basically burn you from as high life as 6 to 0. There are even certain combos that existed out there where you could burn your opponent from an entire 8 life to 0. Like, it was ridiculous. So basically they errated to say limit 1, so you can only activate 1 copy per turn. Funnily enough, this card may actually be seeing a slight return with the new Android 17 promo for Invoker, so not really looking forward to that, but still it will be burning you a lot less frequently than it was back then. Most they can do right now is 2 points of burn damage for the most part in 1 turn, so that's pretty solid. But yeah, this card for me, super S tier toxic. I know a lot of people actually like playing the strategy, would probably place it lower, but I found it very annoying. Then we have 3-drop Cell, which came out with the entire successor engine, which actually came out with the Cell Surge Leader, which is now banned. So the leader got banned, and much earlier on, one of the main deck cards actually had to be errated, and the reason was because you can only play 1 copy of the card per turn, and that's kind of how it read, but you could use the activate main unlimited times, and each time you used it, you would actually not play the Cell. It would stay in your drop area, but you would go by this, you know, resolve as much of the card as possible type of thing, and you would actually make your opponent discard a card every single time you'd pay 1 energy, because there was no once per turn clause on it. There was no you can't activate this effect after you've activated it again clause on it. So it was kind of like this broken interaction because of how the rules worked and how the card was worded, where you could literally just pay 1 to pitch a card out of your opponent's hand, and your opponent could do literally nothing to stop it. So I guess this one probably goes in S tier. Like, it didn't like make any other deck in that format unplayable, because like it wasn't a tier 0 strategy is basically what I'm trying to say. It was a very annoying, very good, and a strategy that definitely was deserving of being taken care of. Man, that was really hard for me to say, but yeah, basically it is true, it was pretty toxic, so we'll go with the S tier there. And anyways, next up we have Cell Xeno, so probably another automatic S tier slam, and the main reason was only because that you could play it earlier than turn 5 and get the quad strike out of it. That was really toxic in the Sin Xeno aggro deck, to be honest. Like, I don't know why they decided to make Omega Shenron an 8 and then Nova a 4, and both of these cards just playable on turn 2, automatically equaling 12. That was a pretty big oversight in my opinion, because being able to go with all that pressure and then play Cell Xeno on turn 2 while your opponent's on 1 energy potentially, basically defenseless, was kind of wild. And then there was the Pan-Grade Whisper that could also restand it and essentially give it back its dual attack. So yeah, they errated it to say you don't get any of the keywords basically unless you play it for 5 energy. And for 5 energy, this card's still very strong, but not nearly as broken, just not killing people on turn 2 like it was back then. So that was the most toxic thing about that in my opinion. Next up we have Dark Broly and all of its battle cards. So yeah, I like this archetype, I played it a lot, but I'm probably throwing this in S tier. Like, there should just not be 0 cost 30k battle cards that have broken effects. Like, that just should never been a thing in the game. They all got errated to basically having a 1 black energy cost, which is very fair in my opinion. Like, a 1 energy 30k with a broken effect is still really solid. And some people have experimented with the deck here and there, but honestly, these erratas plus the leader errata probably makes it rather unplayable. If you took away the leader errata, which I'm not saying Bandai should go do, it would just be too messy at this point. But if Bandai were to revoke the leader errata, maybe there'd be something there with Dark Broly where it could be a decent rogue black deck. But yeah, I mean, with all those changes, it's pretty much unplayable, which is fine though, because the deck was way too strong at full power for sure. Then we have the Dark Broly Unison. So yeah, probably another S tier card, maybe even A tier though, but like, this was the most powerful card in the Cell Surge deck, very arguably. They errated it because I guess when they had printed the card or created the card, they didn't really account for Spirit Boost. And if you could Spirit Boost and proc his auto to make your opponent pitch a card, that would have been like obscenely beyond broken, like to the most ridiculous degree, right? But luckily they caught that and they errated it. But still, even in a Spirit Boost based format, they were able to you know, abuse Dark Broly and make it really broken in Cell Surge. So yeah, just a super tanky Unison, makes your opponent lose tons of resources while you lose practically nothing. This card was super toxic. Next up we have Death Ball. So Death Ball was errated kind of like unnecessarily in my opinion. So basically what it was able to do pre-errata was, if your leader was a Frieza, you got 15k combo. That's cool. Then there was like a separate effect because of how it was worded, to where if it was your turn, you could pop a battle card in rest mode. And because it was 2 separate sentences, you could actually use that effect with any leader, or maybe any yellow leader, and pop anything in rest mode. So it was basically just a 1 energy like piece of removal. It was cool, but they decided to errata it to make it all 1 effect, so it was only playable in Frieza leaders, which again I think was unnecessary. So we're gonna go with that in the not very toxic tier. Not very toxic at all, actually. I think they could have left it out, and it could have just been like a cool piece of sideboard tech if you ever wanted like a 1 energy removal. Obviously nowadays, like, we're several sets later and we have a lot better options for that, but still have been cool to leave it alone. But anyways, guys, we'll get into the last of these cards, but real quick, we do have a word from today's video's sponsor. Yo, Dragon Ballers, real quick, I need to let you guys know about 2 events that are coming up soon, being hosted by PPG. All the info will be down in the description, but we have the Dragon Ball Super Card Game Fest from March 26th to the 27th. This is going to be the first ever event where they are trying out the sideboarded best of 1 format. Besides that, it'll just be a celebration of the Dragon Ball Super Card Game, so you're not going to want to miss it. The other one is for organized play through the Pro Play Tour. We have the regional qualifier April 2nd in Kentucky. Shots to the Midwest, so you're definitely not going to want to miss that. Shout out to PPG because they run awesome tournaments, but also besides that, this is the thing I've been concerned about in the past, where these tournaments just don't get enough advertisement. So shout out to PPG for doing more and putting in more work to advertise these events. I hope to see you guys there. Let's get back into the video. All right, shout out to PPG. Let's get back into it. So we have Goku True Fighting Spirit, a newly added addition to the errata list, and I'm going with this one and not very toxic. And I think a lot of people are going to be surprised about this one, but here's my thing with it, right? So being able to spam this card out in Gogeta Xeno was definitely very, very annoying, but I do really like it, or I guess I did really like the ability to spam it against these hyper control decks, because let's be honest, guys, when you're playing against Blue Baby or Invoker or Hatchiyak and these decks that can just infinitely negate you, it's super obnoxious. Like, geez, let me just get an attack through, let me play the game, right? It was really annoying, but of course I can see it from their perspective, how being able to spam 4 copies of True Fighting Spirit Goku was annoying, right? And of course removal exists for the card, so it wasn't without answers, but it was definitely very annoying. But I don't think it quite compares to a lot of these cards we're talking about up here. And again, I do like that ability to punish these hyper control decks, but it was annoying for the mid-range decks that just, you know, wanted to use a negate and would get super punished for it. I do definitely see that. Then we have Young Invaders. Okay, so this might be another surprising one, but in my opinion, I'm putting this one in low toxicity. Now, the whole thing with the King Vegeta deck, yes, it was killing people on turn 2, but that was because of about 5 other cards that we talked about in other videos at this point. And Young Invader, when it got errata to basically adding an energy cost to play your Young Invaders, it made the strategy unplayable. And that effect on its own, while it was a free burn damage, there was a cap. You could only burn your opponent if they were above 5 life. And that was just the way the deck played its engines. Like, yes, it had very strong cards because of that engine, but after they banned Tau, Belmod, all these different cards, I think they could have left the Young Invaders field card alone and just let the deck operate with what it had and not all these other broken free play cards. That would have been awesome in my opinion. I've actually called for a few times where I think this card should be unerrated. I know actually a lot of you guys think the same thing from the comments of those videos where I mentioned it. I think it would be nice. It would let King Vegeta be just a little bit more playable, and I don't think it'd be crazy by any means. Maybe it would actually be a decent red aggro deck because they do have good red 1-drops. But yeah, I mean, if they ever do that, time will tell. Then we have Boost Tech Piccolo. So this and all the other set 1 super combos were errata to have super combo, because I guess at the conception of the game, they didn't really realize that if you could just slam like 12 of these cards in your deck, it's going to be pretty broken, right? So that's where they came up with the concept of super combo. We're going to go with not very toxic. It's kind of cool though that this was actually like an iconic card in the game because it was the first super combo. These were the only types of cards like this that existed. We had so many funny names for them back then, like guard cards. Peter Katani, shout out to him. He called them like the Gains cards or something. Like some people called them shields, I think, from one of the older card games. But yeah, like these cards are really cool, but not very toxic. Super combos are just a staple of the game at this point. All right, now we have 2 cards that are worth talking about together: World Peace and Plea for Salvation. So I guess I'll just rank them first. World Peace probably goes in S, maybe A. I think I'll slot it in A, and then Plea goes in B. So World Peace and Plea got the same errata that says you can only reborn a battle card that costs 3 or less, and they both cost 4 as extra cards. So in a Shenron deck that's able to use Wishes for free or Desires for free, you have to have the appropriate amount of energy to actually use the card, which in this case would be 4, but you have to have 4 energy to reborn a 3 or less. So they got errated into a much weaker state. Plea for Salvation, I get why they did it, because they errated World Peace and the Porunga Leader that all had the same effect, but like it was locked to green Shenron leaders. Green Shenron leaders haven't really done anything ever in the game, so maybe they could have left it alone, but I do definitely understand why they did it, just to keep everything kind of uniform. But yeah, World Peace I don't think was as much the problem as, one, the cards that it was able to revive, and two, just the ability to ramp that these Shenron decks had. I think you know, it was just a combination of really broken cards. Like World Peace for free is absurdly powerful, don't get me wrong, maybe it deserves a spot in S tier, but yeah, I think it was more so just a limitation of, you know, a lot of the boss monsters not caring what color your leader is, and again, the crazy ramp that Shenron had access to at the time. That kind of makes more sense to me. Then we're going with Majin Quickening. So this card got errated basically on the, I think it was the set 14 ban list, where Bandai was taking a close look at, you know, the free play in the game and the amount of aggro in the game. So I think I'm going with Quickening in the A tier. A lot of people were really scared of the Majin Vegeta deck, and it was good, don't get me wrong, but I guess like stats wise, it never really broke like that rogue sphere. I would say it did win like an online tournament, and that's bound to happen even for a rogue deck when it's really strong. But yeah, I don't think like in a typical best 3 format, like non-COVID type thing, I don't think it would have been an overly dominant deck. So I'll go with like slightly toxic for this one, because it was kind of crazy how you could put out a lot of damage on turn 2 by resolving the Quickening. But now that it's turn 3 and beyond, it's a lot more fair. Obviously, I think it's a fine errata, to be honest. Then we have Black Smoke Dragon Unison. So funnily enough, this card was errated 2 different times. I believe both were for balance. The most recent one was definitely for balance. Now you basically just can't play the card in a non-Machikabura deck. As far as toxicity goes, I don't know. I think I'm putting it in B. I never viewed this card as particularly toxic. It was kind of wild that it was just basically a free draw in Gogeta Xeno, but I was always a bigger fan of the Mirror Unison anyway. Both were definitely very good in the deck. Again, I just didn't think like this was like an overly toxic card. It's fine, they errated it. They want to keep it to the Machikabura archetype only. That's totally cool with me. Then we have the Vegeta Leader, the promo leader for the Gogeta BR ramp strategy. This was errated because the way it's printed says you can choose up to 1 card and discard it, activate battle, and add a card, right? So basically, by choosing up to 1 to discard, you could always just choose 0, and then you could basically get top 3 for free at no cost and potentially just add a lot of cards to your hand. That was a really strong thing the leader had going for it, but they decided to errata it before release, claiming that it was, you know, not printed as intended. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Maybe they thought it would be too powerful after printing it the way they did. But I mean, I could definitely see it being a mistake, because why would you ever print a cost that's optional? There's no real big benefit to actually paying that cost, right? So that would have been kind of weird. But I think they could have left it alone. I think it would have been nice, because the Gogeta BR strategy kind of needed some love. Like, the actual Gogeta leader for the strategy is not very bad, don't get me wrong. But having a leader that could have plussed a little bit more would have been nice. And even then, like, you're not really making anything back on your fusions for the most part. So you'd be adding a lot of cards to your hand, then pitching a lot of cards to fuse. So I don't know, could have been fine. I'm going to go with this one and not very toxic, because I guess never just had its time to shine. Then we have Triple Flash Goku. So I feel like I'm maybe misremembering this format a little bit. I don't remember it being as toxic as I think it probably was, because it was errated to where its condition that says it couldn't ever be countered, it was changed to where you had to be playing a red Saiyan leader to be able to actually resolve that. And there was like the Mecha Frieza turn 2 kill deck, and I think this card was out at that time. Again, I feel like I'm kind of misremembering that format, and thinking this card was a bit more toxic than it actually was. But I think for that reason, I'm gonna put it in the slightly toxic tier. It was probably really annoying to deal with at that time, and it definitely deserved the errata that you had to have a red Saiyan leader to actually resolve that. But yeah, I'm just not remembering it. Maybe, I think there were actually Shenron decks too that kind of abused this kind of thing early, where you gave it triple attack, but again, I'm just not remembering all that correctly. Now we have 2 planets to talk about. So the first one is Planet Vompa. This was errata to say you could only use this card's effect if you had no battle cards in play, because before that, Red Broly BR was able to establish multiple chains for basically 0 energy at the cost of like 1 discard from your hand, which actually wasn't really that much of a cost. So Planet Vompa, I don't know, there was like one format where Red Broly like really took over, and again, this was just addressed when they were looking at a lot of the free play in the game. So I think for this one, I'll go in the slightly toxic tier, again, only because like Red Broly never really completely took over a format. So yeah, I think that's probably pretty appropriate. And then Planet Tuffle, I'm probably gonna go in the same thing, like slightly toxic. This card made a lot of cards really broken in the blue baby deck, and this was basically given the same Erratad treatment as Vompa, where you had to have no battle cards in play to actually reduce the cost of your blue counters. But yeah, this made a lot of cards really strong, like Mafuba, for example. A 1 energy Mafuba was actually stupid strong in a lot of matchups. But same thing, blue baby never really totally dominated a format. It was very good for a few formats, don't get me wrong, and I'm very happy about this Erratad, because seeing less of that deck makes me very happy. But yeah, it's actually pretty funny. We have an even split of all of our tiers right now. So we have the last card, Zamasu the Eliminator, and I think a lot of you guys are gonna be a little bit unhappy with this decision, but I am gonna put it in the, you know, medium level toxic tier. That's because, yes, it was ridiculous. Yes, it was really strong that I was able to counterplay Unisons, and this plus Violent Rush Bojack existing in the same format made blue yellow feel very oppressive. But I've said this multiple times. I think you could have banned Bojack or Erratad Zamasu, and that would have curbed blue yellow perfectly fine. You didn't really have to do both. And the reason I really like Zamasu the Eliminator was because it was one of the very few ways to actually interact with Unisons. And now the fact they errated this card, it seems like they're going to be very hesitant to actually ever introduce more like direct Unison interaction. So I think if you took away Violent Rush Bojack and really took away blue yellow's ability to produce a ton of energy through Aegis, but you still gave them that ability to counterplay Unisons, the only color combination in the game that could do such a thing, it would have been a really unique thing to blue yellow. It would have been a really cool kind of like cornerstone of, you know, many different formats depending on how important Unisons were in that format. I think Zamasu could have been pretty cool, but it was very annoying to deal with in the format that it was good. But anyways, guys, that's gonna be my list. I think just going over it real quick, I do agree with all this for the most part. Taking a second look through the tiers, yeah, I think this looks pretty good to me. But anyways, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.